We continue our knowledge sharing mission through a series of interviews with marketing leaders from all over the world, and we are thrilled to have Matt with us here today. Hi, Matt.
Hi, my name is Matt Harper. I'm the Commercial Marketing Director for EMEA at Palo Alto Networks.
Thank you for joining us, Matt. Matt, why don't you start off with telling us a bit more about yourself and your role at Palo Alto Networks?
Sure. So originally from the UK, I've been living and working in Amsterdam in the Netherlands for the last 13 years. And the last 10 of those years have been at Palo Alto Networks. And funnily enough, I started a new role Monday this week. So it's a it's a brand new role to the organization. So very excited to start it. The way to describe it is we're a very matrixed organization. Think in terms of products and market segments. My previous role was a product-focused role. So I was responsible for network security marketing. And I would cover all segments from top G2K companies all the way down to the commercial market. But now my focus is on the commercial market specifically. So how do we bring value to customers in the smaller end of the spectrum? And how do we go after landing net new logos and driving scale in the organization?
Well, congratulations on your new role, Matt. Can you tell us a bit about how you actually got into marketing?
Sure. So I actually found marketing by accident, which from speaking to my colleagues and peers is quite common within particularly tech marketing. I graduated university and, of course, in need of a job, in need of some money. I started off as a business development rep, so a telesales role. So I worked for a technology company for a few months before the company that I was working for got bought out by a bigger company. And so there was some reorganization. And the option was given to me. You can either move to Bristol, which is a town where I went to university, and join the marketing team, or you can go and sit in Maidenhead, which was sort of in the middle of the UK, and you can continue your role as a business development rep. And I thought, well, marketing sounds fun. I like the city of Bristol. I've lived there before. Let's go with that. And from there, my career in marketing has just bloomed and blossomed. Never set out to be in marketing. Never thought it was really a career option that was on the table for myself. But yeah, I seem to have found my groove. And I think the thing that really solidified my career in marketing was one of the first roles I had, which I wasn't very good at, was a field marketing role in covering UK, Nordics, and Benelux. And I was quite early in my career, so I wasn't quite brave enough to go and do that role as well as needed and be as bold as possible with the local sales team. And I found myself getting deeper and deeper into the digital side of marketing. And the company that I'd worked for had just purchased Marketo, and they were short of experts. So I quickly tooled myself up on Marketo, became a certified expert. And from there, I really got into digital marketing and gained the experience and expertise needed. And that's where my career sort of springboarded from there.
Nice, man. It's a fascinating background, definitely. And also, now that you changed position, and you're with your new role in commercial marketing, I'd be interested to know how your focuses change in terms of marketing now at Palo Alto, and what is your main focus given your new role at the moment as well.
Yeah, sure. So if I start by what the previous focus was, so our focus for the last few years has been around driving platformization. So organizations, obviously we sell cybersecurity, you didn't know. So what we have identified is that organizations that adopt a platform approach are more secure, they have fewer gaps in their environment, and ultimately that allows them to have a better and more effective cybersecurity infrastructure. So in the past few years, my role has been how convincing or marketing to the very top echelons of organizations, securing multi-million-dollar deals, $10 million deals, all the way up to $100 million deals for platformization across our entire breadth of our product portfolio. And my specific expertise was around our network security offerings. That was our firewall, our secure access tool, and also our AI tools. And the company has been doing that very successfully over the last few years, and we've driven a really strong motion around platformization. But the company has also changed quite a lot in that time. So even though platformization still remains one of, if not our top priority, we've recognized the need for us to address the needs of our commercial and mid-market customers who have a completely different set of challenges and needs as those larger organizations. And so my role was created to help address that challenge and address those needs by building out value propositions and use cases and solutions that directly address the challenges faced by those smaller organizations. And when I say smaller, we're talking around 5,000 employees and less. So they don't always have the resources and the teams to adopt this huge portfolio of this platformization approach, but they do have very similar challenges or similar needs that can be addressed in a slightly different way. So my goal mostly is around scaling. How do we scale the message and how do we scale the route to market? So that's, of course, working with our partner ecosystem, but it's also about building new narratives and value propositions that we can position to these customers and go and drive that big impact at scale.
Of course. Matt, what would you say is the biggest challenge marketers face today?
There's a few. I think one of the things I see happening quite often is there's almost this decision paralysis around everything that we do, wanting to demonstrate every skill and every tool that we have all at the same time, and just being able to show everything off. So I think one of the challenges that people should learn should learn is to show restraint. It's not always about doing everything, saying everything, positioning every product all at the same time, and using every tool at the same time. It's about working simply. And my manager now, he says we want to make waves by throwing rocks, not pebbles. And I think that's a really good way of thinking about it. How do you do one or two things really well? And of course, we live in a world where we're expected to deliver omni-channel or multi-channel marketing, but that doesn't mean you have to have 50 assets with 50 messages talking about 50 different products. It's about demonstrating one or two skills or one or two value propositions really well. And the other challenge that I think is actually connected to this is that we within marketing, and we do it to ourselves, by the way, I think we measure too much, or we measure in the wrong way, or we measure our success in ways that aren't relevant to the business or are too convoluted. I think what happens then is we suffer with losing credibility with our stakeholders, and we get tied up in this. We measure ourselves into an impasse sometimes, and we get tied up in the data. And we talk so much, particularly in the tech world, about democratizing data and data-led decision making. And I think that's all great, but I don't think everyone in the team should be burdened by having to do that. Not everyone is completely data literate, and even the people that think that they are, if you give them a dashboard that can look at the minutiae of every campaign and every initiative, you can go into a dashboard wanting to find a certain outcome, and you can find it if you use the right filters and look for it in the right way. So you end up with non-reliable data outcomes. And I just think it would be beneficial for all of us if we were clearer and simpler in what we wanted to measure, but we took that with a pinch of salt, and we didn't just force everyone to try and interpret data in all these different ways. Use experience, use our gut, and try and step away from. If you're using metrics that your stakeholders don't understand, don't use them. They might be interesting in the back end to look at, but you sometimes go into a meeting with maybe it's our sales colleagues or other parts of the business, and we start talking about all the different parts of the funnel, the EMEA or the MQL, the PQL, whatever. And this doesn't mean anything to most people. Yeah. And yes, it can be useful to us and to help guide us make decisions, but it shouldn't be the thing that we live and die by.
No, I agree. I agree, Matt, definitely. And that's regarding the challenges. And instead, what about in terms of opportunities? What do you feel is the biggest opportunity at the moment for marketing directors that may not have been available, for example, in the past? So I've been reflecting on this, and I think one of the biggest shifts that we've probably seen over the last few decades is we now live in a time that is the most inclusive time in recent history. And what I mean by that is we now have a better understanding of not only diversity in terms of gender and race and equality in those senses, but also diversity of thought and understanding, for example, non-neurotypical people. And I think as leaders now, that greater understanding means that we are able to create the right inclusive environment where people feel safe, people feel valued, their needs are being met. And I think that's where you're able to unlock the true potential of people. And I think right now, and particularly this is something that we live and breathe within Palo Alto Networks, and inclusivity is one of our key values.
when you see that you're able to create an environment where people do feel valued and safe and secure, and that their individual needs are being met, you see people blossom, and you see new ideas, new innovative ways of thinking. I think it's simultaneously one of the biggest opportunities, and one of the challenges that we have is not getting led down into these singular ways of thinking, and being open to new ideas and new approaches, and kind of receptive to different ways of thinking.
Yeah, no, I think that's a very interesting idea, Matt, and definitely perception. A lot of the times I get a lot of people say, what are the biggest opportunities, and one of the hottest words right now is AI, right? How AI is also one of the biggest opportunities that we have, but also being able to be in an environment that's actually a lot more inclusive and stimulating to each individual also makes a huge difference. So that's definitely very, very interesting.
Yeah, and actually, to add to that, I think that AI will be an enabler for driving this diversification as well, because it in many ways AI can be a leveler to people. If there are some people struggle with whether it's being present in physical meetings, or being able to put their ideas on paper, or maybe they have a lot of challenges like with written word. AI can in many ways be a leveler for people, and kind of get the most out of people's diversity.
Yeah, no, I think so. I think so as well. I mean, if it's used in the right way, I think that it can definitely be beneficial in that aspect. My next question for you, Matt, is how would you describe your role of commercial marketing director in one word?
Mm-hmm.
Why? And I know that you just made this transition on Monday, so you probably haven't had too much thought about that. But I'd love to hear your answer.
Yeah, no, I thought about this as well, and I wanted to stay away from giving too much of a corporate jargon word, and one of the so the word I'm choosing is alchemist, and that's completely ripping off and inspired by a book written by Rory Sutherland, who, if you spend any time on YouTube, I'm sure one of his videos has popped up at some point, or on LinkedIn. But he wrote a book called Alchemy, and the premise of the book is that humans are irrational, and only with sort of original thinking, or thinking that might appear to be irrational, can you start to really invest in having new ideas. And some of the greatest business successes come from ideas that seemed irrational, or that an accountant would have never signed off on. And I think the way that I see my role, and I can say this because I'm very fortunate to have a really good team, is I'm kind of looking for those margins. We all know how to go and whether run webinars or do events or build a marketing plan. That's all fine and great, but I don't think that's where the fun or the excitement is. The fun and excitement comes from novel ideas, trying something new, something someone's not done before. And I think the word alchemy, it works really well, because you're kind of you're taking a bit of product, you're taking a bit of customer insight, you're taking a bit of this and some marketing tools, and you add it all together, and what can you turn it into, which is bigger than the sum of its parts. And it's I fully recommend, if you've not heard of him or sought him out, to go either watch videos of Rory Sutherland, because he's very charismatic and funny, and he's all over LinkedIn and YouTube. But the book Alchemy is fantastic.
Yes, I'm familiar with the book. The book is definitely great, and I can see how it's related also to marketing in different ways as well, Matt. My next question, Matt, for you is, if you could ask other marketing leaders such as yourself one question, what would it be?
So it would actually connect to the previous answer. And so it wouldn't be a question whereby I'm looking to get information. It's more a question that I want them to ask themselves, is, maybe I'm a bit of a marketing hippie, but like, when was the last time you tried to do something completely different that wasn't driven by the data? Because like I said, I think all the best things happen probably despite data-driven insights. All of the new, the coolest, or the most impactful ideas, they often have they're often in conflict with rational thinking or data-driven intelligence. And what I would encourage marketing leaders and anyone in marketing to do is to do that experimentation and to try those things and trust your gut. So my question would be, when was the last time you did that?
That's a great question. And my final question to you is, Matt, what career advice would you give to anyone starting in marketing?
So I've boiled this down to three. One of them is something that I've kind of already hinted to a few times, but it's don't get trapped into the marketing echo chamber, especially if you're in tech marketing, because some of the nonsensical jargon that we use and the phrases and the terminology, and you just get caught in this cycle. And it's not until you speak to someone who's out of that bubble and they go, what on earth are they talking about? Anyone who worked from home during COVID and had a partner who's not in tech marketing probably overheard quite a few conversations and said, what on earth are you talking about? I understood every word you said in that conversation, but none of it made sense to me. And I think we are all guilty of that. We live in this marketing echo chamber of nonsensical jargon, vanity metrics, flashy dashboards. So my first piece of advice is don't get sucked into that. Be okay to speak in a more natural language, to have a different viewpoint and a different opinion. The second piece of advice would be find good vendors and treat them well. One of the biggest mistakes I see people make is they try and do everything themselves with internal resources and internal ideas. Sometimes just speaking to an agency, small or big, or an events company, you unlock new ideas, you unlock new value. And once you find an agency that really does that for you and works well for you, and you have that connection, treat them well, because I've seen it many times at Palo Alto Networks. You find the right agency, you can grow together really well. And then the final piece, and this is what I think is probably most important and is missing quite a lot within modern marketing teams, meet and speak to customers. If you are not meeting and speaking to customers, hearing how they talk about their needs and challenges, hearing how they talk about your products or services, because I can guarantee you every single customer is different. They have completely different languages that they speak in. And I guarantee none of them are the marketing language that you're using. And for me personally, so last year I completed our Executive Briefing Center speaking course. So now I'm an Executive Briefing Center speaker. So I go maybe once or twice a month to our EBC and I present to customers. But part of the presentation is we start off in the morning with the voice of the customer. So the customer gives their presentation, talks about their challenges, their needs, and what they're expecting. And every customer is different. And it really unlocked a much deeper understanding of what our customers are trying to achieve, what challenges our buyers are facing. And it changed the way that I think about marketing entirely. And I felt almost silly that I'd spent so many years not directly engaging with customers. And I don't mean speaking at events. Speaking at a booth at an event is not the same as really sitting down and listening to your customers. So that would be my most important one.